The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Ibrahim Boubacar Keita, President of the Republic of Mali. I request protocol to escort His Excellency. On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome to the United Nations His Excellency Ibrahim Boubacar Keita, President of the Republic of Mali, and to invite him to address the Assembly.
President of the General Assembly, Majesties, Heads of State and Government, Secretary General of the United Nations, and ladies and gentlemen. Allow me, first of all, to extend the warmest congratulations of the delegation of Mali for your brilliant election as President of the 72nd session of the General Assembly of the United Nations, and also to commend the remarkable work which was done by your predecessor, Ambassador Peter Thompson. I would also like to render a very well-deserved tribute to the Secretary General of our organization, my dear friend Antonio Guterres, for his leadership, his vision, and his commitment to the values, principles, and goals of the United Nations. Mr. President, Mali welcomes the choice of the theme of the current session entitled Focusing on People, Striving for Peace and a Decent Life for All on a Sustainable Planet. This theme is both very relevant and extremely topical in a world which is facing multiple threats to peace, to security, and to the very important efforts which are aimed at improving the living conditions of our populations. Indeed, the top priority of our common efforts at the present time is the effective preservation of our planet, which is, of course, in our general interest, but more urgently, it is also in the interest of future generations. Given these many challenges to which my country is not immune, I have never wavered since I assumed my position as President of the Republic. I has never stopped making an investment to bring peace and security to my people and raise it to an acceptable level, to create the conditions for a true decent life for the benefit of the Malian population, and also to improve our living environment. Ladies and gentlemen, thus, since my election in 2013, I settled down to the task of seeking a negotiated political solution to the domestic dimension of the Malian crisis. Indeed, after 8 long months of arduous and steadfast negotiations in Algiers, and once again, I would like to say how much we appreciate the efforts of our Algerian brothers, and we thank them for the hospitality that we received in that wonderful white city. The agreement for peace and reconciliation in Mali was concluded. Today, Mali is pleased with the conditions which were thus created for its future. The most important merit of the agreement would certainly have been to immediately restore trust among the Malian parties. No more violence. With the implementation of the agreement, the general situation of the country has improved significantly. And here, of course, I would spare you the long list of concrete measures and actions taken by the government of Mali to implement the agreement in strict respect for the letter and spirit of the commitments which we have undertaken. By way of example, I'd simply like to point out that thus far, what we call in Mali the interim authorities and the transitional colleges, 2 key elements of the agreement, they are now operational in the 5 northern regions of Mali. Along the same lines, I also welcome the current trend to bring about the definitive return of the administration in Kidal. This fortunate situation was made possible thanks to the efforts conducted by the Malians themselves, with the facilitation of international mediators and the support of MINUSMA, the UN stabilization mission in Mali. At the same time, the government, under my authority, has worked to stabilize the security situation in the central region of the country, which is of great concern to us right now. This is a particularly critical and urgent situation, which followed the discussions in Algiers, and so it is a new front that has to be pacified and has to be made secure. And thus, important measures have been taken, and their implementation is underway with very encouraging results. These results, there's no doubt that these results reflect the common desire of Malians to move towards peace, towards reconciliation, and to create conditions that would allow all Malians to live together. We also owe these results to the multifaceted support of the men and women of the UN system in Mali. They have paid the highest price in order to help us in Mali, and that is why I would like to welcome here the remarkable work of the civilian and military personnel of MINUSMA, who have been working in very difficult conditions and often dangerous conditions. From this podium, allow me to also express my thoughts for all of the victims, both civilian and military victims, national and foreign victims, who have fallen in the line of duty in Mali. The implementation of the agreement has seen many obstacles, which have led to long delays, and has often led to a great deal of procrastination and delays. All of these led to great impatience on the part of national opinion as well as the international community. And here I would like to express our deepest gratitude to the Security Council for adopting Resolution 2364 of 2017, renewing MINUSMA's mandate. Furthermore, I also welcome the adoption on the 5th of September 2017 of Resolution 2374 of 2017, setting up the legal framework for the sanctions regime against those who are responsible for actions which obstruct the implementation of the peace agreement. These two resolutions are aimed at effectively resolving the type of difficulties which are underlying the implementation of the agreement. It also reflects the firm determination of my government to tirelessly continue its political and institutional efforts to diligently conduct the process which is linked to the effectiveness of the agreement. Mr. President, the worsening of the security situation in Mali has had an adverse impact on the implementation of the agreement for peace and reconciliation. Indeed, insecurity in Mali and in the Sahel is a source of great concern for my country and for our neighbors. This situation is a real threat to international peace and security. It is marked by terrorism, violent extremism, and other forms of organized transnational crime, including drug trafficking, arms trafficking, and trafficking of and human trafficking. These organized crime groups are thriving throughout the Sahel. They have significant logistical, material, and financial means and represent serious challenges to individual institutions and organizations in each of our states. They are claiming lives in the course of criminal and asymmetrical attacks, pushing their actions, seeking to find more space which escapes the sovereignty of our countries. And they are extending their criminal activities, seriously threatening the very foundation and existence of our states. No country alone can tackle these cross-border threats. And this has led to the establishment of the G5 Sahel by Burkina Faso, Mali, Mauritania, Niger, and Chad to take up together the common challenges which face the security and development of our countries. Since its inception in February 2014 to the present day, our collective organization, which I had the privilege of presiding over for the period of 2017-2018, our organization has made immense progress. It has set up what we call the G5 Joint Force for the Sahel to fight against terrorism, transnational organized crime, and migrant trafficking. The adoption of Resolution 2359 of 2017 of the Security Council is certainly a very important step, but we would have wanted it to take place under Chapter 7, which would have guaranteed for it predictable and sustainable financing, including through the United Nations, in accordance with the decision of the Peace and Security Council of the African Union of the 13th of April 2017. The G5 Sahel Joint Force is part of the common will of all of our states to become fully engaged in the security and in the development of our common territory, and with the support of partners who I welcome here for their support at our side. Today, we're working relentlessly to make this force effective and operational with the greatly appreciated support of our friendly countries and partner organizations. The initial operations of the Joint Force we hope will begin in the month of October 2017, and I can assure you that these operations will be led with the greatest respect for human rights and for international humanitarian law. In this regard, a civilian apparatus will be deployed within the force in order to take care of this dimension, which is very dear to us, because the success of the force is based on the full and ongoing support of our population. However, I would like to draw your attention to a few challenges along the road to making this force operational. Among these challenges, a prominent one is mobilizing comprehensive financing for the force, and therefore it's an opportunity for me here to invite all of the friendly countries and our partner international organizations to the International Conference for the Planning of Contributions to the Force, and this is scheduled for December 2017 in Brussels. I would like to offer you the guarantee that the resources allocated to this force will be managed with total transparency. Furthermore, we remain open to any support which our partners can provide, making it possible to better manage the resources of our joint force. I would also like to add, my dear friends, I would like to invite our friends and international organizations, which will be extremely useful. The battle that we're carrying out in the Sahel must be maintained, and if it fails, it will be dangerous for the civilized world. And that is why, in the area of the equipment for the battalions, strengthening logistical capabilities, as well as in the communication sector, the urgent medical evacuation, as well as the fight against IEDs, here we need your aid. At the same time, the G5 Sahel places a great priority on development issues, on population resilience, on governance, and on decent jobs for the young people in our respective countries. And here I would like to invite the international community to support us through the priority investment program of the G5 Sahel. Mr. President, the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals remains a priority for Mali. In this context, the government adopted in 2016 the strategic framework for economic recovery and for sustainable development, the CRED, for the period 2016-2018, whose primary objective is to promote inclusive and sustainable development for poverty reduction and the reduction of inequality in a united and peaceful Mali, relying on the potential and the resilience capacity of our population with a view to achieving the SDGs by 2030. The macroeconomic framework of our country has improved, and many indicators show many encouraging signs, namely a robust economic growth rate with a yearly average of 6% and a substantial improvement in the business climate. As observed by our Union. In this positive context, Mali will organize on the 7th and 8th of December 2017 in Bamako. We will organize the Forum Invest in Mali, and we invite friendly countries and international organizations to come and bet on Mali. Mr. President, a Sahelian country with an agricultural and pastoral vocation, Mali is deeply concerned by climate change, and this is one of the major challenges for the survival and for the development of humankind. And that is why I'd like to reaffirm here today Mali's commitment to the effective implementation of the Paris Climate Agreement, which we are a member of. And here, the international community must remain mobilized for its implementation in order to preserve the ecosystem for present and future generations. Mr. President, the world continues to face many public health challenges, such as HIV/AIDS, malaria, tuberculosis, and Ebola. While welcoming the progress made in fighting these pandemics, we have to strengthen international mobilization to reach our common objectives to eradicate these diseases. We have to step up our efforts to implement the policy declaration on the elimination of AIDS by 2030, which we, the global leaders, adopted here in New York in June 2016. When it comes to migration issues, Mali fully supports the process underway within our organization aimed at adopting by 2018 a global pact for safe, regulated, and orderly migration. We have to find a solution together, appropriate solution to the human tragedy in the Mediterranean and in the desert, which shocks all of our consciences with its thousands of casualties, including women and children. This maritime cemetery is a scandal for the 21st century. Mali is, at the same time, a departure, transit, and destination country for migrants. And hence, we have adopted a national migration policy in order to better manage migration. Mali has also set up national mechanisms to better manage migration issues. And here I'd like to welcome the substantial contribution of the Malian diaspora to the economic, scientific, cultural, and social development of Mali. Yes, this diaspora is at the same time our source of pride and our wealth. Sir, the people and government of Mali remain vigilant when it comes to the situation in Africa and the rest of the world. And we are concerned by the situation in Libya, which continues to have an adverse impact on the Sahel region. And we call upon all of the Libyan stakeholders to seek a peaceful solution in order to settle their crisis in a sustainable way. Mali is also attentive to the situation we have in the Middle East, in particular a standstill in negotiations over the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Mali reaffirms its support for the Palestinian people and their legitimate struggle to regain their inalienable rights, and calls for a resumption of negotiations with a view to a two-state solution, Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace and security in a peaceful Middle East. We're also concerned by the unprecedented rise of terrorism, violent extremism, and religious intolerance throughout the world. To contain these global threats, which have spared no country and no community, we have to strengthen international and regional cooperation. We have to promote fruitful dialogue, an ongoing dialogue between civilizations, fight against the causes of vulnerabilities which expose our communities to extremist ideology. Mali also welcomes the success we have seen in the fight against terrorist organizations around the world. And we launch an appeal for more cooperation and coordination in the fight against terrorism in the Sahel region. Mr. President, the realities and requirements of today's world mean that we have to adapt global governance to the challenges of our time. The revitalization of the General Assembly and the long-awaited reform of the Security Council become increasingly inevitable if we want a United Nations which is capable of responding effectively to the legitimate aspirations of all nations. And this was said today here. Mali reaffirms its commitment to the common African position on Security Council reform. And furthermore, we would also like to voice our concern over the trend to reduce the peacekeeping operations budget of the United Nations at a time when security is becoming a more important issue. Dear friends, I would also like to reiterate the appeal of the government of Mali for the necessary adaptation of peacekeeping operations to the radical change that we have seen in the area of peacekeeping, new global threats. And we believe that today the appeal that we launched earlier for support for our common and regional organization of the Sahel must take the form of increased support for the Sahel region, and we hope that the financing promises that were made will be kept, because very often this remains simply announcements and never materialize. And this is urgent for the population of which is facing different types of threats that affect our Sahel region. Dear friends, allow me to tell you as well that today we are deeply concerned by the trend, as I said, the trend to reduce the United Nations budget. Fortunately, we were all somewhat reassured today by the strong statement that was delivered today, and that reassured us. But we all want to bring about peace, and we have to provide security for the world. We have the duty to leave no one behind and to create conditions for an inclusive development for our populations. We have the collective responsibility to save and to preserve our environment and our common planet. Through my voice, Mali is fully committed to play its role in this collective endeavor to build a world which is better for all. Thank you very much for your attention.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Republic of Mali for the statement just made. May I request representatives to remain seated while we greet the Head of State.